Hello. I have two things to look at today. The Hytale glider gameplay I have not yet seen. I've been trying to avoid this so I could save it for a video. And on top of that, I believe the specs have just been released. Yes, minimum specs right here. Quebec Corner is currently premiering a video. I'm going to watch that the second I'm done recording this. And if he says anything in that video that I thought was meaningful to me, that I thought was important, I might record another video, reiterate some of those thoughts, but only if there's a good bit. So I'm going to start with the glider gameplay, because this is pretty short. Let me make sure you guys can see it. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I can see it being useful for movement. It just seems like it's not glidey enough. And on top of that, it might be a bit too slow. Yeah, I feel like he's falling too quickly. Now, I know Simon said, I think he wrote it down here. Yeah, Simon said, this version is very early, missing momentum, wind effects and sounds, animations, and much more. We're just being transparent and sharing what we're working on. They have no intention of making this into a fast-flying device. So, I don't think they're going to make it faster, but it just feels like it's falling a little too fast. I think I can see a little bit of like a momentum shift when he turns here. He's still slightly going that way, but that could just be him holding W and A instead of just W. I also want to look at some of this world generation, because this is beautiful. I think this is zone 3, but I don't have the zones memorized, so I could be wrong. That looks beautiful. My brother plans on making zoos in this game, so he's going to be very excited to see the generation of this zone. There's some buildings off in the distance. Here, I'm already on max quality, never mind. That looks like some ruins of some sorts. What animals are in the distance? I mean, that looks kind of like a crab. There's something flying there? Maybe like the things from Terraria? Then he lands on some bones. That's just an eagle, actually, or a hawk. That might have been what that was at the start. Alright. Now we have the blog post on minimum hardware, and I'm very excited to read this because is it not loading? Crap. I'll be right back. Alright, we're back. Sorry about that. My internet literally went down mid-recording. Kind of inconvenient. Alright, I'm going to read all of this. As we get closer to launch, many players have asked what kind of hardware Hytale requires. Our goal is clear. Make the game broadly accessible while still supporting the scale, simulation, and modability that define Hytale. Remember that we are working on performance improvements. This post outlines what we've tested so far, why certain hardware matters, and the current minimum, recommended, and recording/streamer system requirements. These requirements are based on real in-house benchmarks and will continue to evolve as we optimize the game. You could scroll down to the recommended requirements for a TLDR. Hytale is not a simple game for computers, so we try to explain as much as possible. We are actively working to bring Hytale to Linux and Mac as soon as possible. I'm glad about that. Mainly the Linux part. I am a Windows user, but I've experimented with Linux, and I do think some distros are bare minimum neat. Okay. Hytale requires both a 64-bit processor and operating system. That's pretty standard. I don't think that's going to be a problem for too many people. Minimum, targeting 30 plus FPS at 1080p on low preset. Recommended, targeting 60 plus FPS at 1080p on high preset. And recording/streamer is a stable frame rate with high quality video capture and streaming at 1440p. So that's like high quality streaming. I stream 720p half the time. These categories reflect actual in-house testing across low-end integrated GPUs, mid-range laptops, and high-end recording setups. Okay, minimum requirements, which is 1080p at 30 FPS, Windows 10 or 11, at least a Intel Core i5 7500 or equivalent, or a AMD Ryzen 3 1200. That's really low. That's like, let me check how much that CPU costs actually. Ryzen 3 1200. That $12 on eBay. That's like okay, wait, sealed? I'm seeing it for like 40. Like unopened. That is a really cheap CPU. So this is really well optimized seemingly. That is 30 frames on low. I don't think we've seen how it's going to look with lower graphics, because I think everything we've seen has been high. RAM, single player with dedicated graphics, so if you have a GPU, then you only need 8 gigs, which I think is fair, and if you have integrated graphics with your CPU, it is recommended to have 12 gigs, which I also think is fair. Honestly, I thought that'd be 16. Multiplayer only would be 8 gigs. I don't know why that's different. Oh, does that mean like for hosting a server you should have 8 gigs dedicated? Because that sounds kind of high, if that is what it means. I don't think it is. Could be. GPU. For integrated graphics, you should have at least Intel UHD Graphics 620 or AMD Radeon Vega 3, which quite frankly, I'm not sure like what these mean. I mean, I understand what they mean, I just don't know what it's equivalent to or anything. But I'm sure some people watching this will understand, because this is a minimum specs video. And then dedicated, so for an actual graphics card, a GTX 900 series, which is really old. I mean, not extremely, but like that is definitely cheap. I wish they had more specific 900 series. I don't know if they mean the lowest card of that series, but regardless, that is a pretty cheap GPU. AMD Radeon 400 series, which I genuinely don't know, or an Intel Arc A series, which I think is also relatively cheap, but I thought it was higher performance than these other two. Or no, I'm thinking of the B series probably. Deprecation notice. Support for Vulkan 1.3 will be required in the future. I'm not sure what that means, but that probably just means you are going to need better stuff when they have Vulkan 1.3. I think it's like DirectX, but like better or something. Storage. SATA SSD with 20 gigs of free space. I'm glad that that's so low, because 20 gigabytes... I honestly... Seeing how high quality Hytale looked, I thought that was going to be well over like 50, 60 gigs. 2 megabit connection for multiplayer, which is surprisingly really low. I mean, it makes sense, but I thought it would be more. UDP compatible, which I believe means like for running a server, you could do port forwarding or something like that. I've done a little bit of like making Minecraft servers, but I don't fully understand everything, so don't take my word on that. But if you don't understand, my word's probably somewhat meaningful. Based on benchmarks where Intel HD Graphics 630 achieved 30 to 34 FPS at 1080p, we definitely recommend setting the view distance to 192 blocks. Ensure that no other programs are running to guarantee performance. So this is all if it's like the only thing you're running, which makes sense. It's also view distance 192 blocks, which feels high, but I'm not. That's what, 16 chunks in Minecraft terms? I'm estimating. I don't know. I don't feel like doing the math. Recommended, so 1080p at 60 frames, and I believe it said this is with high graphics? Yes, high preset. Windows 10 or Windows 11, an Intel Core i5 10400, I don't know if that's how you're supposed to say that, but, or an AMD Ryzen 5 3600. I'm looking up the price on that too, Ryzen 5 3600, because I believe that's significantly higher, but it's not bad. Actually, it's only like 60. That's like a $60 CPU, so that is still really easy to be hitting like good frames, 1080p. 16 gigs of RAM, standard, not surprised. Integrated Intel Iris Xe graphics or AMD Radeon 660M. Again, don't know much about integrated graphics, but apparently the GTX 900 series is still enough. In fact, all of the GPUs for minimum are the same for recommended. SSD with 20 gigs of free space. I don't know. I mean, it's saying SSD. I'm assuming hard drives work too, though. I don't see why they wouldn't. It'd probably just be slower for loading. 8 megabits of connection for multiplayer, which makes sense. That's closer to where I thought it would be, so that's probably just less lag. Hytale procedurally generates a world that can, in practice, grow without a fixed limit. Based on extensive playtime in exploration mode, we found these numbers to be representative of a normal playthrough. Keep in mind, the more you explore, customize, and build with a wide variety of blocks, the more memory and storage the game will require. So it's 8 gigs to install. That's that's like insanely small. I'm genuinely shocked that they've managed to get it to that low of a file size. Saved game size in exploration mode. It is just about half of a gigabyte for a 5,000 by 5,000 block section, and then 27 kilobytes for a 32 by 32 chunk. I'm not sure what that means, but that is really, it seems really well optimized. I wonder how they're managing to save so much space in the file size. Like if they have it all encrypted or something. I genuinely have no idea. We recommend at least 10 gigabytes of available storage, with 20 gigabytes being a safe bet to enjoy the game for a long duration. SSD is strongly recommended. Okay. So you can have a hard drive then, presumably, but I do understand why SSD like almost definitely should be what you have. Network requirements. Hytale has to be downloaded from the internet, as we do not offer physical sales. Once downloaded, you can always play single player in offline mode. That is amazing. I'm incredibly happy that they're doing that. I hate online-only single-player games. For multiplayer, the network requirements mostly depend on your view distance. You will download a lot more data than uploading. Your upload speed is generally irrelevant and very small. That makes sense. So it's sounding like it's in real time, which I think Minecraft might do this too. This is probably normal, but I never thought of it. I didn't know this. Sounds like it's downloading all of the blocks as you render them, like the information of where they are. We have tested an exploration mode server and created a worst case scenario by traveling at 1.5 times speed to keep loading new world data faster than a player could. View distance at 192 blocks will require 2 megabits a second, and it is recommended to have 4. View distance at 384 blocks is required to have 4.5 megabits per second, recommended for 7 megabits per second, and view distance at 480 blocks will require 6 megabits per second, but it is recommended to have 10. And this is worst case scenario. If you play normally in an exploration mode server while mining, crafting, and exploring, you will not consume nearly as much bandwidth and should even have playable experiences on 1 megabit per second ADSL connections at lower view distances. I don't know what that means, but especially playing minigames such as Sky Wars, Bed Wars, or other minigames with small maps will result in very low bandwidth usage. This is all quite low, and this is worst case scenario on top of that. So I'm honestly kind of shocked that it's this low. But then again, I can't think of reasons it would need to be high. But it's just these are genuinely really low numbers. I wonder what the highest view distance you can go is, because like I want to be playing on 10,000 blocks. I don't care about how much it hits my performance. That'd be beautiful. For players who want to record, stream, or produce Hytale content with stable frame rates during high bitrate capture, which this is me, this is for me. The goal here is not raw FPS, but consistent frame time under heavy load. Large battles, complex builds, high view distance, simultaneous server simulation if in single player. It is required to have Windows 10 or Windows 11, an Intel Core i7-10700K, or AMD Ryzen 9 3800X. I'm going to look that up again because I think that's actually getting to like a, I don't want to say high end, but like just above mid-range CPU. No, maybe not. Never mind. Okay. So on eBay resale, just the CPU, it's like $60, but I think it would be like 150 according to just the first few Google results. So that is definitely a good CPU. I'm seeing anywhere from like 150 to 250, so I don't know. 32 gigabytes of RAM, understandable. An NVIDIA RTX 30 series. Now, if that's anything in the 30 series, like if a 3060 will do good enough, that is 100% okay. That is more than acceptable. Now, if you need like a 3080 or 3090, that's going to be annoying, but I'm assuming that's not what they mean. So, 30 series isn't bad. AMD Radeon RX 7000 series, or an Intel Arc A series. That's what it's been for all of these, right? Okay, that's interesting. These recommendations are made as newer graphics cards provide much better video quality for a given bitrate, especially for live streaming scenarios. If supported, we also strongly recommend the use of AV1 HEVC for video recording. I don't know what those mean. I might actually have to learn about that because if it's useful for streaming or recording, I probably should know that. NVMe SSD with at least 10% or 50 gigabytes of free space available. And for best performance, we recommend using a separate drive for video recording. That makes sense. That all makes sense. One internal benchmark, AMD Ryzen 9 9950X3D and an NVIDIA RTX 5080 with two 32 gigabyte DDR5 6000 RAM sticks, which this is like just better than my build. I have a 5070 Ti. I want to say only 32 gigs of RAM, but I got it as a pre-built because it was on like huge sale. It was 100% worth it, which is rare for pre-builts in my opinion. But these specs sustained around 400 FPS at 1440p resolution, with the view distance set to 768 blocks in single player while recording the game in AV1. That is insanely impressive. 768 blocks in every direction. That would be... I'm not doing the math, but that's thousands, tens of thousands, I want to say. And 400 FPS at 1440p with that. So I would be just shy of this, because my specs are just short of these. I think my CPU is a good bit worse, but still. This tier is optional but helpful for creators who want stable 60 FPS at high resolutions during recording sessions. Hytale runs both a client and a server. Depending on how you play, your hardware requirements change. Single player is the most demanding scenario. Your machine runs the full game client, rendering UI and gameplay, as well as the entire simulation on the server for NPCs, world generation and updates, and the networking layer. This increases CPU and RAM usage compared to multiplayer. Generally, the server or single player requires more CPU performance due to NPCs, world generation, and voxel logic running on your computer. That makes sense. I'm glad they're doing server side running differently, although still on your PC if you're playing single player. But I'm glad it's running its own thing. I believe that helps performance a good bit. In multiplayer, the server runs remotely. Your PC only handles graphics and gameplay, which typically results in better performance on the same hardware. If you intend to play only multiplayer or minigames, you may be able to use less than the requirements listed below. Mods will increase requirements, that makes a ton of sense. Large content packs, complex server logic, or extended view distances can push both the CPU and the GPU harder than in the baseline game. Makes a ton of sense. The most impactful performance option is called view distance. This is the radius around the player that is visible, loaded, and simulated around the player. Did I read that right? That felt weird. I think I did. The major problem of view distance is that every time you double the view distance, you are quadrupling the amount of world around you. This means you have 4 times as many blocks and NPCs, which are causing your computer to work harder. We recommend you experience Hytale with a view distance of 384 blocks. We designed Orbis around this distance, but if that is not enough for you, you may want to spend some time dialing in the ideal view distance for your own computer. This is a visualization of 192 view distance, which honestly, that's already enough. Like, I would prefer more, but that's just because I want to be fully immersed in this world, but this is enough. More than playable. This is a ton. This is what they recommend. From here, I'm trying to imagine, as a character, I wouldn't notice anything past this. And then this is... Okay, you know what? On second thought, 384... no, sorry. This is 192. It does look kind of low from an actual first-person perspective. But this is more than enough. This is all you should ever need. And then this is 768. Jeez. I will definitely be playing on this, but this is not necessary. And then this is 1024. I feel like things look less distant. I don't know if it's the renderer is weird or if it just actually isn't that far, but that looks weirdly close. This section is very technical, and it is not expected that players understand this, but it may help a technical friend / community member to help you determine if your computer / laptop is sufficient. Yeah, I'm going to read the rest of it because there's not much left, but... Hytale is a sandbox voxel game, which means it cares more about CPU performance and RAM than many other games. Once your GPU meets our minimum specs, upgrading your CPU and having enough system memory will usually help more than buying an even faster graphics card, which makes sense. Internally, Hytale builds large texture atlases, big combined textures, and keeps a lot of world geometry in VRAM. Higher view distances increase this usage. That's why some GPUs run out of VRAM or start stuttering even if they look fine on paper. So, seemingly view distance is going to be the only thing that's going to get like hard capped by your GPU. That, and if there's any mods that are doing a crap ton of visual stuff, obviously. As a rule of thumb, make sure your GPU meets or exceeds our listed minimum, including VRAM. Prefer a dedicated or discrete, I don't know what the discrete means, but GPU over an integrated one on laptops. That, yeah, I agree with that. A lot of laptops do have integrated graphics. Integrated graphics are not... I don't like them. I don't like integrated graphics. It's not enough for me. After that, focus on a solid multi-core CPU and enough RAM rather than a top-end GPU. That makes sense. We have not finished optimizing Hytale. That's crazy to me. This seems like this is already way more optimization than any AAA game I've seen do in a while. Graphics, world simulation, memory behavior, GPU overhead, and more are still being tuned. I don't know what most of that meant. Expect performance to improve further as we progress through early access and beyond. Our mission is to continuously improve the performance of Hytale. We are still working on the system requirements for Mac and Linux, which we intend to support for older Macs, Intel processors, and newer Macs with M1 Plus Apple processors. We will update this post as we receive more data. We received a lot of inquiries about the Steam Deck, and we also lack the ability to test it right now. And we don't plan to launch on Steam until we determine our ability to comply with Steam's policies. On paper, it should work on Steam Deck, but we also lack good input mappings and small display UI, so we will once again ask for some patience. I'm shocked they're going for support on so many things. Steam Deck support as well as Mac and Linux support is... I'm with the way they were talking about the old engine, they were like... They were downplaying it so much to saying it's only gonna run on PCs, and I'm thinking, okay, they switched to the new engine because like they need to have more people to be able to play it. They probably only had Windows support, but they're doing Mac, Linux, Steam Deck, and Windows support. That's impressive to me. These requirements will be updated as we apply optimizations through early access. Our focus is to make Hytale run well across a wide variety of systems without compromising scale or modability. If you have a computer that doesn't run single player very well, you should join a friend and play with them on their single player or play on online servers as they show better performance. Alright. I don't think I have anything else to say. I believe just those two things were all I had. So with that, I'm going to end this video and go watch Quebec Corner's video. I recommend you guys go do the same because his videos are way better than mine and they're very informational. So with that being said, goodbye.